Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Richard Terrell. I go by Kirby Kid, and you are watching week 19 of the Mario Maker weekly recap. We've done this for 19 weeks. We've learned a lot. This is the end, near the end of this crazy learning experiment and curriculum. We have one more week to go. Next week's will be the next stream will be the final stream and kind of like a recap celebration. So this is the last lesson you're gonna get, and this topic is quite complex. We're talking about development, and essentially development is just a general term for how you present an idea, what you do with that idea, how you introduce it, how you describe it, define it, what you do once it's defined, and how you wrap it up, kind of. It's not like pacing. When we talk about pacing, we mostly talk about difficulty and the proximity of various types of challenges in a level. When we're talking about development, we're really talking more on a conceptual level, and because of that, that's what makes this topic really difficult. So this lesson is going to be a little interesting. We're going to try a few different approaches to explaining what I mean, but I'll go ahead and show you what I mean to get started over here. Where is it? Here we go. Right here. This is our communal worksheet. And as you can see, this is our courses tab, in which we have filled out for ourselves 228 different courses that we've made learning Mario Maker and making levels since about 19 weeks ago. So that's a ton of courses. And the feedback we give to these courses comes in these 21 different flavors. And we started on the easier stuff on the left side, and we're getting to the harder stuff in the middle, and now we're on the hardest stuff. We talked about layers, we talked about secrets, we talked about pacing, maybe. We talked about speed running. We talked about, where is it? Yeah, we talked about speed running. We talked about counterpoint, and that's a complicated lesson in itself. But now we're really talking about clarity and development, introducing concepts in a safe way, building in complexity in a logical manner. Is there a twist? Are you using a Kisho kinesthetic approach? I just made that up. Is there a climax to your idea? Is there a resolution? How many steps were presented to get the gameplay idea across? Stuff like that. These are the questions we ask ourselves when we are considering development. And I'm going to show you a level real quick in Mario Maker to help explain kind of what I mean and where we're going. So let's go over here and do this. All right, so this is a funny level. This level's funny, so I'm gonna. Where is it? Right here. Noko to hone no kono ko o tsunagi or gietayo. Kono no koto hone no koto hone no kono koto hone kono no to o. Random syllables. I have no idea what that means. Okay, there we go. Ouch. No. It's so funny. So this level is called Sausage, and as you can see, this setup squeezed a whole bunch of enemies together and squeezed them out of a tube, kind of like when you're making sausage. The concept is really straightforward. It's pretty cleanly presented, and you can even play around with a lot of the momentum stuff. And stuff like that. But when we're talking about gameplay ideas, we are really talking about stuff like this. Something where even if it's an obstacle course, even if you can platform inside of it, there is a concept, something that's did it again. There's some concept or abstract idea that can be extracted from it, and via that abstraction can relate to concepts outside of the game itself. And in this case, it's the process of making sausage and squeezing all those enemies together. And it looks so cool like that. Don't kill me. Killed. So yeah, being able to have those pieces relate to the idea of making sausage. It's why that is a sort of unique and particularly effective gameplay idea. But when we're talking about development, so that's a one-off, right? You do one thing, you set it up, people see it. When you're doing one thing, it simplifies a lot of your level design. Your clarity is probably going to be pretty high. You don't have to worry about pacing because it's one thing, and you get the point across almost with a high degree of reliability. But for all the other gameplay ideas, which I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the spreadsheet and show you our gameplay ideas tab, we have collected over 400 different gameplay ideas. What are you doing? Right here. Describing what it is, dating it, and any of these ideas can be converted into a number of levels, right? These ideas aren't just like the sausage idea where you do it once and there's only pretty much one way to do it and you get out of there. These ideas can be taken in many different directions, and you can even do the sausage idea in many different directions. But essentially, an idea, because it's sort of a gameplay idea, is because it's abstracted, you can stretch it and apply it in different ways. You can minimize it, you can maximize it, you can make the focus, put it in the background, put it in the secret. So much flexibility, right? So this is why level design is really complex. This is why game design is really complex. With a game like Mario, you really do have a lot of ability to create different kinds of experiences, whether it's platforming, racing, puzzle, story, a lot of different things. But even in doing so, each one of your ideas can be executed in many different ways. So we're looking at the last gameplay idea that I put in. It's called the safest place to be. So I have this idea above called Here They Come. And a player enters a room, the enemies are on tracks waiting to drop into the room. The player can see the enemies. The track will drop after about 20 seconds or whatever, and when the player hits a button to speed it up. The player has X amount of time to alter the room by breaking blocks, grabbing power-ups, knocking things off of tracks, hitting P-switches, etc. You set yourself up for success by crafting the space before the hazards drop in. So I call that idea Here They Come. It's a quote from Drebin from Metal Gear Solid 4, and also, if you want, Falco Lombardi from Star Fox 64. Here they come. That's just a neat little idea. Just kind of thinking about different things, and this distinct idea comes in of like, what if you could see the doom, like your doom coming for you? Like, how will you set up? How will you prepare? It's kind of like seeing an army at your gates, and you're at the Lord of the Rings standoff kind of a thing. But this idea can be applied in many, many different ways. I'm surprised we don't have a rocket slime idea. Oh, that'd be fun. Let me just put that in. Rocket slime. So then the idea I had after that was the safest place to be. Similar to Here They Come, complex assortment of enemies and elements that will drop from a track straight down into a room. The player has to find one spot in the room that will keep them safe if they don't move. The elements will chain react and leave a space at its safest place to be. Hint, it is inside the Ava. But essentially, some stuff is about to rain down on you. You got to find the nice spot that's going to keep you safe. And then when it all rains down, it's kind of like almost like an auto level, but you don't move and everything's just exploding and doing stuff around you, but you're safe. So you kind of have to read the formation and kind of anticipate how it's going to land. You can even make a Meteos style gameplay out of that. This is crazy. I'm going to type in, do I already have Meteos? Meteos launches. I do have the idea. Okay, let's not worry about that. But yeah, these are ideas. These are flexible. You can do these a lot of different ways. And what I love about our latest latest semester of the workshop is that we've been doing these collaborative projects that out of this, what we call the Workbench. And as you can see, the project gets a gameplay idea, and these gameplay ideas that you pick from are from that list. Anyone can pick any idea, and then they scope out what they think the level should be, and then they have a limited amount of scope points, and every time they specify something that they want in the level, it adds up the points, and if you stay at this level or below, you're good. So you're anticipating what kind of idea you have, the complexity of the idea, how much scope you can apply, how much complexity you can put into it, and then calling the shots ahead of time to try to get a really clear vision of how the level is going to be. We call on our own workshop members to take care of very specific tasks, hopefully based on their strengths, but not all the time. Sometimes it's just fun. And you call on people to do things that they've proven that they can do well in order to achieve a vision that's, you know, something much better than what you could achieve on your own. We have plenty of ideas in the works. I started one called Shellfire. I'm working on one called Circuit Breaker, Aeroporter. Adrian started one called River Styx. But it's cool. We could have actually picked the same gameplay idea for multiple of these projects, and we would have ended up with very, very different courses, which is just me trying to explain to you the flexibility of gameplay ideas, of abstractions in the first place. So the question is now, how do we develop an idea? What options are available to us? How do we go about that process, right? Well, I think this is the best way to explain it. This is a level that was recently passed from Akamarak to Dr. Haji, and Dr. Haji to meet Kirby Kid, and Kirby Kid to Bleach. And it recently was released. It's a really cool level, using a room structure and everything, but somebody probably already snatched the world record. Yep, Fire Cakes and Bleach fighting again. Spock made practice rooms. Cool. Yeah, so I don't want to give away all the secrets, but let me just show you a little bit of what's going on here. Oops, you're not even seeing it. Haha, good trick. I need to put on my Twitch chat. Okay, so yeah, I wish we kind of did this workshop entry in a blitz, so I don't have a lot of screenshots to show you for the development of these ideas. But for other levels in the Workbench, I could show you, like, at each stage when it passed from one person to the next, that the things in the levels change and the ideas are being shaped, and some things are being cut and some things are being added. But in this case, this setup, what we have here is called the Akamarak. What did I call this? Gameplay ideas. I called it the Akamarak layout, where he starts you off in a room. You got choices on different rooms you can go to. You can clearly see you need keys in order to progress, and that's how it goes. So this is the Akamarak. Go into a room, and you see keys. They're like, hey, I like keys. And you're like, I don't know how to get them. And then you're like, oh no, bad things are happening. Oh, bad things happened. So, yeah, each one of these pipe rooms has a different idea going on. And at its very simplest, you know, this whole course is themed around these boos, and as you can see, if you wait too long, they start creeping in. But these individual rooms are designed to be as unique as possible. So you're not going to see a lot of conceptual variation here. They're actually designed to be different from each other. So nothing about the rooms is really going to be too similar to the others. This one has donuts and these what we call donut Stairmaster. And this one, it's got tracks, right? Conveyor belts. That's a little scary. This one has lots of cheese, like in Metroid. And if you want the course ID to play this one, I highly recommend it. And if you're not part of the workshop, feel free to get us feedback. I'll get you the course code in a second. But yeah, here's a whole completely different idea, right? So just like we did with our bonus exercises and just like we did with the enemy gauntlets, each individual room, because it's sort of disconnected from everything else, tends to end up being unique one-offs like this. So while the level is very cohesive in theme, each individual room is just independent ideas. And the whole point of this design, which I'll show you here, for this workbench, it was up to me. I already hit it. I'll do this. Where is it? Where's the yellow thing? What is this level called? Road Ghost. Yeah, where did it go? Oh well. It's supposed to be here. So 11, 12, 13. Where's the? It's right here, hiding. So as you can see here, it was called on me to do alternate path to a bonus room, and I was supposed to. That's a layer, right? And I was supposed to have even pacing, so each room was supposed to be about the same difficulty. And I was called. Wait, this is the wrong one. Where is it? Ghost. Where did it go? It's hidden again. I need to stop that. Alright, here we go. So I was called to do open nonlinear exploration, and I was called to do pipes to clue the player in on where secrets may be. So when I touched it, I added more pipes, and in order to convey this idea of nonlinear exploration, the course gives you choices right off the bat, and you can choose to grab the mushrooms, which is a choice, right? Or save them for later. You can choose to enter rooms, for example. You can go into these pipes at any order. That's 5 different choices here and 1 choice up there. Another cool thing is if you go into a room like this. Oh, not that one. The rooms have individual secrets. So like as you explore and as you play, the order that you do the rooms may change. Like this one, you might think to yourself, oh cool, an easy oh cool, an easy 1-up, so I don't need to grab that one at the beginning, right? That kind of a thing. And you go for that. And you get out of there. Right, so your strategy may change, and if you find one room particularly dangerous, you might go to the room that you're good at for getting the mushroom, then go to the dangerous room. And get yourself hurt. I can't get myself hurt, I'm too good. There we go, get yourself hurt, and you're like, well, I'm gonna come back to that room later, and let's say you don't have any mushrooms left, you might search for something in this room. So there, and you're like, oh, I'd rather be Big Mario in this room, so I'm going to come back later. So there are different strategies for every room. There's secrets in every room. There's reasons to be big. There's bonuses in certain cases for being small. And depending on how you mess up or how many resources you have left, you might make different decisions every time you play. There's reasons to go in and out of rooms if you get certain secrets or whatever. And you don't need all these keys to progress. Clearly right here you need 2 keys, right? And there's 5 pipes, and there's a key in every room. So all that just leads to your non-linear exploration of the different areas, and you're never too far away from another area as long as you keep going back to that hub room. And that's a really cool way to do some non-linear exploration. So yeah, we're talking about development, we're talking about different ideas, we're talking about their flexibility. And now I'm going to show you a little bit of what development may mean in a non-Mario, non-video game context. Alright, so this may be a bad idea, but I'm doing it. Alright, behold. Really cool Pokemon name. Chespin. Chespin's got a hat made out of grass. When Chespin evolves into this cool dude named Quilladin, or Quilladin, if you want to mispronounce it. This dude has more of that green helmet motif going on, but now it's grown over its entire body, like so. You know, no, like so. And you can see here on the right that the evolution from this dude to that dude got a little fatter. Helmet thingy got bigger, the nose got bigger, the eyes got more stuff, but the face is largely the same, right? And the toes are the same. They're just in this brown fur, right? So it's interesting. The final evolution is chestnut. And as you can see, that shell motif, that armor motif, and the spikes that used to be on Quilladin's head, doop, right? The nose, the spiky tail, the spiky ears that were once a hat, now it's this hardened white substance or whatever. And the grass like hardened, and this reminiscent of tree bark more so than grass or fur. And it looks like he has this hardened armor, and the spikes are on his arms, right? And you can see this very humanoid like weasel body, which, you know, humanoid like weasel body, but it's inside this armor coat now. The tail's gotten bigger. This guy has like a helmet on his head now, right? A lot of interesting ways to develop this particular idea. Let's go to Sarah B to read a few things. Let's hope I spelled that. All right, let's type in Chespin. Zoom in a little bit. Okay. Wow, the zoom in did not help enough. Come on. There we go. Chespin. The quills on his head are usually soft. When it flexes them, the points become so hard and sharp that they can pierce a rock. Such a thick shell of wood covers its head and back. Even a direct hit from a truck wouldn't phase it. That's a lie. The quills on its head are usually soft. Such a thick shell of wood covers its head and back that even a direct hit from a truck wouldn't phase it. Okay, so that's our dude, our little dude here, right? And this is our medium dude. Oops, I didn't read it, what it was. This is a spiky nut Pokemon, right? So it's kind of like a weasel. Doesn't say weasel, but it's a weasel. And the concept that it's being modeled after is a nut, right? So nuts are hard to crack, so it's got a shell just like a nut, and that plays into its lore. This guy relies on sturdy shell to deflect predator attacks and counterattacks with its sharp quills. You're like, okay, maybe the quills are these brown things, maybe it's like bark-like structure, maybe the quills are still its helmet. Probably not the claws, but that's cool. They strengthen their lower bodies by running into one another. They are very kind and won't start fights. These guys are funny. That's funny. That's all we got for these dudes, really. And then finally, Chestnut, the final evolution. This is a spiny armor Pokemon. The previous evolution is a spiny armor Pokemon as well. So right now these are little armor dudes. The description says its tackle is forceful enough to flip a 50-ton tank. It shields its allies from danger with its own body. When it takes a defensive posture with its fists guarding its face, it can withstand a bomb blast. This cool. It has bulletproof as one of its abilities. So that's really cool. Like, it puts these arms in front of its face, and sometimes they show a picture of it like growing them and expanding, and it kind of turns into like a siege wall or whatever. But that's kind of the idea that goes behind this Pokemon. So you're like, oh, okay, I can see the certain elements were carried through, certain elements were not. Every evolution doesn't have the same color palette, right? Like Chespin is light brown, Quilladin's more dark brown with a tan face, because he be cool. And then chestnut has very little dark brown. The claws and the inside of the shell are the darkest parts. Everything else is this weird white color with some kind of like super beard, right? These are quills, and these are quills, and these are quills of sorts, and these are quills. But the idea manifests in different places and does different things like that. So like, oh, well, what does this have to do with development? Well, development is always about taking some kind of abstract idea and doing something with it in a similar way, but not the same exact way, right? So you can see stuff here, like this is some guy's idea of a chestnut evolution or maybe a mega evolution, but you can see that this concept is just more armor, more spikes, angrier face, bigger spike. It's a ball now. That's kind of cool. It's a ball, but it was a ball previous evolution, right? So like that's much in line with the same idea here. So this is another, oh, even more spikes and maybe even more armor, but this armor looks like metal and it's supposed to be a wood Pokemon, right? So like what's it doing with all these? I don't know. Kind of neat looking stylistically, but honestly, it's weird looking. Like, so this is another one probably from that other artist where it kind of grows its arms down to these shields. These shields are cool. Looks more like metal shields. That's cool. Kind of lost the nut theme there, but it's using the armor theme, so that's kind of cool. And then you're like, who are you? Mega chestnut? So these dark brown colors make it look like it's closer to the chest, the middle stage, which has that dark brown. So it kind of reverted back in style, added some red from somewhere. The whiteness is still here in there, but then all it did was like add more armor to places that would have been covered up by its arms anyway. So like, well, what sense does this make? Maybe it's a fast runner now and it doesn't have any defense, or it doesn't need defense or something. But this design kind of looks like a Mega Man X boss. But yeah, it looks like it's paying homage to the original in terms of color and shape, but not really in terms of that idea of being sort of a armor wearing, what is it, creature dude. What is it? An spiky armor Pokemon, right? So another thing is, okay, what about this dude? Went for the knight-like aesthetic here. Took another one of that second stage with the dark brown, didn't do anything white with it, and just kind of put armor around it. Kept the body armor and turned it into an upper chest armor. That's kind of cool. Made it more Weasel-like. That's also interesting. And then you see stuff like this for the second evolution, right? Or this is a proposed third evolution. Like, let's say they didn't. This is an idea of like, oh, you saw the second evolution and you wanted to see what the third one might look like, but they just made it larger and angrier, right? And just added some red. What does this red do, right? With the real Quilladin, this is like hair / quills that presumably were underneath Chespin's hat the whole time. Maybe it needed some time to grow. You're like, oh, I can see the connection there. And then you're like, you just got a red thing. And what are these? What are these red things? It's kind of cool that the previous evolutions have red tips, like, oh, reddish tips, and Chespin only had it on the bottom of his feet and the tail and the nose. So you're like, okay, color is cool, but like, what function does it serve? So clearly, if you can, so all this is kind of saying that to develop an idea, you have to have some kind of concept in mind. You have to have some kind of direction you're going. And when you do that, you have to break down your subject into different parts, into different categories with different weights. So let's say like angry eyes was really important for Quilladin, and maybe the deck says like he gets angrier and angrier and angrier. So then maybe a suitable chestnut would be one of these angry looking ones, right? Like that is a part of the theme, part of the abstract idea that can carry forward pretty easily. And if you're going with like nuts and armor and trees and bark and defense and things like that, then angry eyes isn't so important. And if you aren't along that same thinking pattern, you might just take this and go, okay, make it bigger and angrier, like then you get something like this. But this is not. This doesn't tell the story. This isn't along the same track. It's just like a fat, angry Quilladin, and so on and so forth, right? There's another first stage evolution I want to show you if I didn't lose it. Let's try to go back. Look at this weird dude. That's just more like a person and Quilladin mixed together. Look at this weird stuff. Just weird. But yeah, we had a stream before on Dio about fake Pokemon and what the general pattern is with fake Pokemon, and people just take an animal, add some weird color, then make it bigger and then angrier, right? And that's like the typical way people make a 3-stage fake Pokemon. But as you can see, there's a lot more subtlety in these real ones. There's a lot more detail, and when some details seem to come out of nowhere, like freaking white color and white armor, you might think like, well, where did this detail come from? Well, depending on what nut they studied or what trees they were inspired by, maybe the trees had little flecks of red but never too much, right? Then the red would carry over as a light motif, a small detail, and not this huge detail. It all depends on where you're drawing your source material from, and Pokemon's never going to say our designers grabbed these nuts and these trees. Okay, that's just part of the development process. So in a way, you can't look at any one Pokemon, any one example of a course, any one piece of something and figure out what all the source inspirations are and what all the where the abstract idea, what it was. A lot of times when you are doing concept art, making characters, character design, or you are writing stories, you have to do so much more background work on your character. Who they are, what's in their pocket, where do they come from, what are their attitudes, do they like chocolate, do they like this? And like, these questions aren't relevant to my story. Kinda, but in the background, having those details allow you to steer and define and detail your character in a way that's very precise and meaningful and heads in a direction, right? Let's say your character's like, I hate chocolate and vanilla. Then you might want to have that character like walk to the other side of the street when it's about to walk in front of an ice cream shop, and like, well, where did that random detail come from? Well, you never have to explain that because this character hates ice cream or is lactose intolerant. They just always decide to go on the opposite side of the street because they'll be tempted, and when they eat it, they throw up. Like, you don't have to explain all that, but those details would be there, and again, it'd be unreverse engineerable because you're not telling them where the source is. Here is another interesting example for development. We're going to go over to this. Oh no, TEDx, don't sue me. So Arden Shore, this is a TED Talk on unlocking music with neuroscience, and he just basically explains some basic things about music and how parts of a song have a sort of grammar and their repetition. You can start something and it has this little pattern. You can repeat it again and it has this pattern. You can try something new in between before like a bridge and then go back into something new. But then you can return back to A and then maybe you can end the song in some unique way. That's kind of how you can interpret these colored bubbles. Boop, 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 boop. So in some sense, designing a character like a Pokemon is different from designing a course in Mario. Pokemon is a singular thing. You see a picture of it, and that is the Pokemon in its entirety. A course in Mario has to be experienced by going through it. And linear courses, you go through it one way, and there's only one way to go through it. Nonlinear courses like Road Ghost, which I just showed you, is you have options. And music is very linear, so we know that the listener is going to be right here when it's right here, right in this red spot when we get to this part of the song, and so on and so forth. You're able to control and organize the development of your ideas sequentially. So like A, B, A coda is something that is very effective and accurate for describing the journey of the song because it's linear. So depending on how much control you give the player to do different things, to explore different avenues, to engage in the game non-linearly, you give up this power. I mean, I don't even have a graphic to show what a non-linear exploration of this song would look like, but just imagine all these colored bubbles overlapping each other, and and whatever, kind of being more of a glob rather than a nice clean line. Um, in a similar way to what we were talking about Pokemon, when you're writing music, and just like we were talking about with writing a story and developing your character with more details than you put in your actual story, when you're writing music, the notes you choose for your song, where you decide to make small little motifs like this, how this red appears here, and then even here at the end it wraps up. So the red's like at the end of the first chunk, at the end of the second chunk a little bit, goes away for a while, then finally red, let's end this. Um, Decisions like that, every note decision, every dynamic decision, everything is coming from someplace. And as a creator, even if your ideas are arbitrary, which they're never completely arbitrary because no art is created in a vacuum, and you're always taking inspirations from things that you learned and sort of shifting and repurposing them, so you always have some kind of connection to history. Um, Even if you think your choices are arbitrary, if they're consistent with you, then you'll achieve a sort of internal consistency that is easier for people to follow. So, um, even when you're writing music, all those decisions that you make that you're like, oh, I just, whatever, I'm just going to make the note go up. That's what I like to do. It's actually probably the result of a long chain of your experiences added together. Some people call this like an intuitive way of approaching things where you don't consciously think about it, but you just go with your feelings. But your feelings are actually made up of a long history of your actual experiences, which largely are made up of your conscious thoughts. So I don't really find the need to separate the two. But you'll make decisions, and your decisions will be for reasons. And if your reasons are clear, you'll add more clarity to your presentation. And when you have such a clear reason, the structure, whether you do AABA coda or ABAB coda or AABCA coda or whatever, will be influenced by that, right? With more linear presentations, there's something to be said about how much you introduce to the player before giving them like a small rest, right? This little purple glob right here, or how much how far do you go before you repeat something or remind them of something, right? Which is what this A to A is, and this second A passage is shorter than this first one. Even when introducing something new, which is this B passage, it still has elements of the A, which should be familiar by now because we've experienced it twice, so on and so forth. Like, there's no exact science to determine that, and that's why I think a lot of people find it hard to teach creative writing and to teach things like game design. But if you break down your concept into multiple different knobs that you can tweak, and then you have a lot of options. So like, you build up that idea. If the idea is too complicated, you need to lead into it. You need something that explains it ahead of time, maybe of an easier or a safer way. And then when you do that, you can do your more complex concept, and then from there you can do something like B, where it's part of that concept but a little more on top, or a twist, if you will. That's kind of Kisho Kintetsu style. And then you can always give them a little reminder of the stuff that they've done at the end or something. Like, you have a lot of options. You don't have to give them the reminder. You don't have to give them the break here. And you'll play around with your level based on your own experiences and your own observations. But there'll be thousands of choices you'll make. So that's just kind of another way of thinking about development. Where is it? Let me go back here. So in Mario's case, I wanted to go to a level that has a little bit more development. Let's go to... You showed me do this last time. You showed me, I showed you. So some development is very linear, right? Like, this is a one enemy thing, and then if this area right here were just like the top with two enemies, you'd be like, oh, very simple increase in complexity. But no, we got new platforms, and we have new bouncing rhythm. That's a 2 bounce, and this is a 3 bounce. This one's going back and forth between a 3 space, and this is a 2 space. That's already a different idea than this up here. Like, and then we have a little bit more complex here. It's a 4 space, right? So even though the space is increasing linearly, the complexity is not. All right, this added enemy is a whole new sort of knob to twist. Before we were just messing around with space and obstacles to keep them in, and one enemy per slot. Now we have two enemies per slot, and there's a different kind of enemies, and something like this can happen. This is new. And then we have even less space, but the same enemy. Here's a 3, and there's a 4, and it depends on which side you kick them. Interesting. And then finally we have a Goomba ascending uphill, which is harder than if it was down below you. And then he's moving back and forth. But yeah, the development of these ideas here, is non-linear. It's not basic, but this continues the idea like, oh, this is two enemies, even smaller space here. And you can see I'm pointing out a lot of the ooh, that was neat. A lot of the different parameters or knobs. If you kick it forward, this becomes dangerous. If I kicked it back, it would have chased me, so that I would have to run. If I just hit it once, I wouldn't have had to bother with that. Like, this is once, right? And you leave it. Or you can have it destroy stuff for you. Ah! Whoa, that was close. And now just different variants on that. Climbing uphill with more... Now this area down here is dangerous. We just learned up there that you can kick a shell one way or another and make it dangerous or not dangerous. This is an interesting sort of combination of the last floor and the other environment and what we just learned up here. Still pretty simple. We just beat 10 things. Oh. But yeah, you can develop these 10 floors in a whole bunch of different ways, even with that limited set of things, right? This is supposed to teach you like a safe way to engage with this dude. I'm gonna die. And now you have less room, so you have to be running fast in order for it to get underneath you. Tight space, this is a new concept. And this one, I was too late right there, so I actually jumped on top of it. This is supposed to be as slow as you go, but if you have this power up, very different way of proceeding. Ah! Now even tighter space. So this plus line up there was a much slower revolution. This one's a much tighter. The one before it's much more complex. And now we have something like this. Like, ooh, very, very tight space. And then if you kill one, the timer changes. It's getting more dynamic. And you can knock this guy off if you want. And now we have some guy that's kind of roaming. He's a little more... Oh, what the? That didn't do anything? What was that? Yeah, different sizes, different level arrangements around him. 1 piranha, 2 piranha, 3 piranha. This is more or less a linear progression right here. If you don't have this, it's a little harder to get up through. A little more dangerous. 3, but you don't want to jump on that one. Still a little bit linear. It's funny. And then a big one. And now we have similar idea, right? But these are much more dangerous. But this first one is very simple to kind of illustrate that you can just walk against these things. And now we have them flying. Very nice tuning there. Or you can go on top. And you earned it. Now to kill them. Oh, I can't? I can. It's probably going to kill me. I'm not going to do that. So yeah, just like when making an argument, forming a sentence, writing a paragraph, explaining anything, what you say, the order that you say it, what you stress, what you repeat. Repeating something is a great way to stress it, basically. All that's important for development. You are trying to get this idea across without words because you're talking about level design, and you have to be conscious of all these things and what can change, right? Like, see how this back and forth is shorter than the one up there? So if you were having a hard time jumping, the one up there is going to be that long, and the one down here is going to be half as long. Ah! Almost got me, too. And this is a little more complicated. You're like, whoa. It got me. I'm back. So yeah, I think development is a lot more interesting when you don't go linear routes, when things don't just progress like, well, it can be like progressing things very linearly and expectantly, like, oh, one enemy, two enemy, three enemy, four enemy, five, it can still be interesting, right? But for the most part, there's so many other ideas and ways to mix things up and reasons to mix things up, right? Oh, no! And these guys come up and trap you, and this one's bigger. Oh, I lost it. Nope. Oh! Oh! That was close. So yeah, the development right there, Cheap Cheeps or Ghosts, and then Cheap Cheeps and Ghosts. That's a neat little twist, right? Even progressing that much. This one's single Lakitu. This one's a single Wiggler. This one's double Lakitu. This one's a Lakitu Wiggler. No. This one's a big Wiggler and one Lakitu. So you might have thought it was going to be single, single, double, double, but then it was some odd, different, unexpected combination of things, including a large Wiggler. And now they're kind of continuing the trend with two small Wigglers and throwing big shells. So yeah, there's a lot of variables that you can tweak here. The size of the environment, the number of Wigglers, the size of the Wigglers, the height of the Lakitu, different things like that. So even in a situation where you think the progression can only be linear, there's still probably a lot more variables than you think, and when you crush down, he can't see you. I like that. Oh, almost got me. Sideways, vertical crushing, small gaps, smaller gaps, bigger enemies, more complex timers with two of them coming out. Ah! Bigger. Now this is a really tricky one. Because you can trigger it just like in the first one, but then it's got a. Oh. Streaming. So I'm gonna exit that. And yeah, so even trying to predict what the next floor is going to be like if you haven't played this course, you're going to have a hard time because the development of the idea is not exactly linear, and there's a lot more knobs even when there's a few elements than you might think. So that makes it to where if there's more possibilities than you anticipate, it increases the chances for you to be surprised. When there's more knobs to manipulate, then it increases the chance of there to be meaningful variation without adding elements, like the number of elements. Just changing the size of something, just changing the position can be meaningful. That's when you really start to understand the expressive range of different options, and sort of hopefully find something that you like and would be unique among other people doing the same thing or working with the same elements, right? So that's an interesting look at development. I have another example here, kind of experimental, but I was doing a writing project here. I took the first chapter of a novel that a young writer in Austin here is writing, and I dissected it and broke it down to a spreadsheet and ran some analysis and And this part of the experiment is seeing how the same story could be told with different goals, with different parameters, with different sort of mini objectives, if you will. So even something like taking the thematic elements of a scene and putting the most thematic things first, or taking the thematic elements and putting the most thematic things last. That's what I experimented with these. Having the more thematic and important statements have fewer words is what I played around with this one. Having it only be characters and setting. Having this one only have all the sentiment here is going to go from negative to neutral to positive. So hopefully the outlook and the tone of the writing for this scene is always going to increase into something a little more positive. In other experiments, other combinations, right? Lots of things. I did like 12 different variations. So even something like Killian was so tired and thirsty, oops, he was tempted to fall face first into the sand and give it all up, but giving up was easy, and Killian tended to make things hard for himself. It was high noon in the desert. Killian slogged through the white sand. Let me do this. It was high noon in the desert, and Killian slogged through the white sand. That's too big. Killian and Rainfall companions were in pursuit of their target. There was silence between the two of them. Killian's steps were solid and evenly spaced. His steps looked proper and adult, while his targets looked like a child's. An insidious smile pulled at Killian's lips, painful and unavoidable. Even something like that, you find a similar telling of this, and you look at it from this perspective. So this is the start of this paragraph. Like anyone else who braved the desert sands, Killian took his chances running into a titan. Killian wouldn't learn how quickly the sand could burn the more delicate skin on his face because he resisted the temptation to fall face first into the dunes. Killian had not yet learned to be comfortable with the consequences of his life choices, so he tends to make things hard for himself. And though Killian survived a fight in a nearby town, he got lucky. Years of training, and he still relied on luck to get him out of tough battles or get him through battles, and so on and so forth. So like this tone starts negative and it goes more positive. So it's going to be just negative, sulking, regret, whatever, and moving closer and closer to something more positive. But a lot of those same details were there. Being in a desert, taking things the hard way. They both talk about the altercation that happened previously in the town and so on and so forth. But these two examples read very differently. And they leave the reader with a different experience. And the more that you're aware of these different experiences, the more you're aware of the different knobs that you have available, the more you're aware of the different ways that you can push those knobs, the more you'll see the possibilities and be able to navigate, oh, I do this for this effect. I want this to happen, so I'm going to choose this thing. And the more reasons you have, the more specific and precise your execution is going to be. So in a lot of ways, no one may be able to guess all the things that you had in mind with your level. Nobody may be able to figure out exactly what you meant in your poetry or figure out all the subtle little secrets and details that you put in your level, but that's not exactly the point. The point is you need those things clear in your mind in order for you to develop your ideas properly, in order for you to do something more surprising, more personal, and more interesting than just 1 Goomba, 2 Goomba, no 3, no 4, no 5. I wish I could find that video. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, hot garbage. Here we go. I love that joke. It's kind of funny that they had kids saying, going back and forth on that idea as if that's an actual good idea and that's a novel thing to just keep ramping up the number. which is probably one of the first things people do in an editor like this, just push the numbers far beyond what they see in normal gameplay just to see what it's like. But clearly, conveying an idea, making a good level, and good level design is much more complicated than they did 3 bullet bills. We'll do 4 bullet bills, and that's kind of one of the main takeaways I want you to leave with from this stream. So yeah, it helps that you have a very complex and precise breakdown of level design in order for you to understand how to develop an idea. It helps that when you are aiming to have a level with a very specific gameplay idea, that you are aware and understand what you need to convey that most clearly. You may need to make a tutorial section. You may need to add some mushrooms so they don't get frustrated at a specific point, taking hits that they have yet to learn how to dodge, because you're doing something very new and untypical. You may have to give them a breather and have that breather not be hard and maybe not even be thematically relevant to the things that you just did, but in some way train the player and set their mind on properly executing in the next section. There's so many reasons for anyone to put a block anywhere in this game that you have to have your own reasons. And being a good critic, playing a lot of levels, breaking things down, that's how you improve your ability to do that. But otherwise, you're not going to find a formula that's going to all of a sudden make your ideas shine. These are ideas we're talking about. This is why it's hard in any art form to convey conceptual things, abstract things, or precise things, or all of the above. So this is why we save this lesson for the very end. You can study logic strings, you can study mathematical proofs, you can study commercials and TV shows and film compositions, you can study stand-up comedic jokes, poetry, short stories, novels. You can study so many things to examine their structure, and just being aware of like how much they introduce to you and how much they don't, right? How simple it seems, but how complex it is. And that'll give you a really good sense of how, ideas themselves are already hard enough to conceptualize, to hold, to ponder, to transfer, to write down, to whatever. So it's not going to get any easier when you're trying to do something in a video game editor. So that's the main talk. Let me see if I can get back. I'm going to check the Twitch chat to see if anybody has any questions or comments. The breaking row is neat. Yeah, that was pretty neat. I can show you guys one thing though. That'll be kind of neat. And we may pick this back up next week. So I started a Workbench assignment. Oh wow. I was playing around with moons right here, and let's check this out. Give me that moon. Give me that moon. The moon's one of the few things that can kill munchers, but they gotta be on the screen. Anyway, so I created this level here for Tony and Yakima to basically complete. I gave them, this is the basic layout, so this is just kind of a rough idea of what the level is trying to do. But you kind of go through, you have some options here, you can potentially get up there, you dodge stuff, you survive, and you get to this point, and you're like, oh, you kick it out, you get your key, and you're like, but now I don't have a key, and I can't get up in there, or now I don't have a shell. So then you gotta kind of get back, no, or die. But yeah, this basic layout doesn't have a lot of, I didn't put any enemies in, I didn't put any coins. I just put the basic idea that has players in a folded level design fashion, going to the end and having to turn back around and having things be a little bit more complicated. Yeah, I'm not paying attention. So we're going to see how they take this concept. Stop it. Stop. And turn it into a level that's easier than what this is, because this is not tuned for difficulty. Oh, that'd be cool if I could dip down and come back up. I'm dying because I'm panicking. This is a terrible way to end the stream. Yep, not tuned. It's such an obnoxious jump. And that's it. All right, guys. I hope I've given you some kind of idea of how complex development is, how it works with abstract concepts like gameplay ideas, and how you could potentially stretch your own level design efforts when you're developing ideas to see how a single idea can be taken into a whole bunch of different directions. And then if you can see that ahead of time, you can pick whichever one you want and be a much better designer for it. But that's been it for today's episode of the Mario Maker Weekly Recap. If you are new to the Mario Maker Workshop and you survived this long, you can go to our website at designoriented.net in order to find out more about what we do here. The whole curriculum is closing. We are wrapping it up next semester or next week, but who knows what we'll do in the future. We're certainly going to keep making Mario Maker levels. This game, this platform is really fun. Working with the group has been amazing, and there's so much more to learn, it's ridiculous. So despite putting 20 solid weeks of work into it, there's still so much to do. Game design and level design is hard. Never underestimate it, and I'll see you guys next time.